I want to delay iPhone's internet access as long as possible. I'm going to be like, hey, if I had a flip phone, you're getting a flip phone.
70% of people over the age of 15 to 24 spends 70% less time with friends and family than those of the same age 20 years ago.
Hi, everyone. I am Megan, and welcome back to the Vision Journal. The Vision Journal is World Vision Canada's podcast exploring the ideas, challenges, and stories shaping our world and how we can respond with empathy, action, and hope. I am pleased to have both Cherie and Jeanine Amapola Ward here. And Cherie Wai is World Vision Canada's Youth Strategy and Innovation Manager. And after serving as a youth advocate for 7 years, she joined the staff team to innovate new ways to inspire generosity and global citizenship around and among the next generation. Jeanine is an author. She's a podcast host, speaker, and Christian influencer known for her honest conversations around faith, relationships, and navigating culture as a young Christian in the digital age. And Jeanine, so many people have been deeply moved by your content, including several of my close friends and family. And so it's truly a pleasure to sit down with both of you today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it and just love what you guys are doing. And I'm excited to chat.
Amazing. Okay, so Cherie and I are both Gen Z, and so I feel like we were the last of our generation to really experience an offline childhood. I'm curious, when did you guys get your first phone?
I believe I was like 12 and I had one of those cute little razor phones. It wasn't like not the flip phone because I feel like if you had the flip phone, you were like really, really cool. But I
Yep.
had the razor one and I was still pretty proud of it. But I think I was about 10.
I was about, I think, 7 or 8 years old. I grew up in Hong
My
Kong, so I
goodness.
roam around in the city as a little kid. So I needed a phone to get around, and I had a brick Nokia. It was white, it was a small, and I remember I would play Snake on it a lot.
That's
Yes.
so fun. Love that game.
Throwback. Yes, that's so good. Yeah, but I feel like phones back then were so much different than phones today. Like now I'm seeing 7, 8-year-olds that are just glued to it all the time. And there's a drastic difference. You know, we still kind of got a childhood, but could,
Mhm.
call or sometimes text, but it wasn't like you're just glued. And there was no scrolling, social media, that sort of thing. Jeanine, you have a son, Duke. What are you planning on doing with him? Have you thought of that yet?
Absolutely. Yeah. My husband and I actually just did a podcast on this because people ask us all the time. And I want to delay iPhone's internet access as long as possible. I'm gonna be like, hey, if I had a flip phone, you're getting a flip phone. Obviously, like I
So
want
good.
him to be able to call me and text me and call his friends, but I just don't think it's wise to give a child unlimited access to God knows what on the internet. And I just
Right.
don't think that they should have that much power to just scroll and stumble on things. And we know in our day and age now, like pornography is exposed to children at an earlier and earlier age. And apparently it's now even moving to 9 years old, 8 years old. And so we will be delaying that as long as possible. And he will be a flip phone boy just like I was.
Perfect. I love that. And I've seen a lot of people have actually kind of gone back to flip phones. Like some of my friends actually have just thrown out their iPhones and have gone back to, the the Stone Age with their phones. So
I
I
respect
appreciate
it.
it. Yeah, I do too. Um, so yeah, as we're talking about these things, we've never had access to more people, and yet we've never felt more alone. And I was just recently reading a study that showed that 80% of Gen Z feel lonely. They report feeling lonely consistently. And millennials are right behind them at 70%,
Yeah.
which is wild to me. So, why do you guys think that human connection is breaking down in the most connected generation in history?
I hate to say it, but it's our cell phones. And there's so many pros and cons to it. It's a beautiful thing to be able to access anything and stay connected 24/7 and follow your favorite influencers and
Right.
always listen to something. But at the same time, we develop these parasocial relationships where we think we know people. We think that a touch point of liking our friend's story or commenting on their post means that, oh, we're friends and I've chatted with you, I've checked in with you, versus genuinely going over to your friend's house, calling them, picking up the phone, arriving with
Yeah.
a loaf of bread. We're trading these real human interactions for, likes and followers. And you don't really know somebody. You can know a lot about people on social media, but you don't really deeply know them through their Instagram page. I mean, I'm a very strong case of that. And so I just encourage people, call people, chat with people more than you just follow them on Instagram or wherever else, Snapchat.
No, for sure. I love the study by the Edelman that they've done year over year on Gen Z, specifically on a global level. And they said that Gen Zs are kind of marked by three characteristics. They're disconnected. We see a statistic that says 70% of people over the age of 15 to 24 spends 70% less time with friends and family than those of
Wow.
the same age 20 years ago. And so
Wow.
that's almost like 1,000 hours per year. And we're feeling disconnected. We're feeling misinformed. A research in Europe showed that almost 80% of young Europeans say that they encounter fake and misleading news on a weekly basis. And then we're feeling
Mm,
afraid. There's a UCLA report that mentioned how one of the biggest desires of Americans aged 10 to 24 is not being popular, not having fun, not being kind, but their biggest desire is to be safe. And
Mm,
so we're
mm,
seeing these characteristics and we're seeing Gen Zs running not to institutions. We're seeing that they feel distrusting. They feel disillusioned that the government, businesses, healthcare, public systems are not there to provide and protect them anymore. And then they're also feeling lonely. So there actually aren't a lot of friends that they feel like they can run to. And so they run to social media and they run to
yeah.
culture. And it's scary because they're running to social media to feel safe, to feel supported. They're running to social media and online to feel like they are connected, that they can have a sense of community, which there is
right.
a lot of nuance there, but they're also looking for
Yeah.
accuracy. And there's almost this
Mm,
like stuck cycle of social media making them lonelier, but then they're also going back to social media to feel more connected. And I'm
Right.
just really curious, Jeanine, like as someone who travels and talk to so many young adults across America, what does this look like in your day-to-day and week-to-week conversation with young adults? And what are you seeing that they're really hungry for?
Absolutely. I mean, that is the largest thing that I'm seeing is people wanting friendships. They're wanting godly friendships. They're wanting friendships that are lasting, that are healthy, that are doing life with them. And I'm in the same boat. I mean, we all want that. We want healthy friendships, friendships that push us closer to Christ, friendships that help us feel known and seen. And so I would say like the top two things that I notice a lot in my DMs are, how do I grow my relationship with God? How do I know him deeper? How do I study the Bible?
Mm,
What does God say about this? And that is exactly, I love those statistics that you shared because a lot of people don't know where to get their information from anymore. They're scared. They're like,
right.
can I trust this source? Can I trust this person? Can I trust the Bible? And they go to influencers like me, who love to talk about faith and Christianity, and they'll DM me like, what does God say about like the dinosaurs? Or what should I think
Right.
about this? Whether it's a super lighthearted conversation to something really deep, what is purgatory? What does this look like? And so they're going to influencers because they can't really trust sources. Maybe they don't feel like they can trust their church or trust a pastor or not even trust. They just don't know how to make those connections and ask the deep questions. And so community and trying to grow the relationship with God it's so prevalent, and obviously like those are great desires, those are great things, those are awesome things that I want people to have. But I think sometimes you're right, like We just need to get off our phones more. You can follow me and watch my content and get as much advice as possible because we're obviously trying to make content like this for a reason. But eventually, you have to go out. You're called to be sent out. You're not called to just sit on your phone and just scroll. We can't just consume, 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 and then never pour out. And I think that's the danger, is that a lot of us are just consuming, consuming, but we don't do anything with it. We don't pour out, we don't serve, we don't send. And that can be a very, very dangerous thing with social media.
Yeah, that's so good. There's an idea that I hear quite frequently. If we're all on social media, then that's the place that we should be to spread the gospel. What are your thoughts on that? Like, just really infiltrating social media and that being the primary place where we're sharing the gospel.
Oh, this one is super iffy for me. And I have wrestled with this in my faith for the last 2 years because there's such a gift that we can use social media. I mean, the Bible literally says like Jesus won't come back until the whole world is reached. And that is the power and the beauty of social media, is like we can reach people in all parts of the world. It's amazing for that. But I also believe that we're called to be the hands and the feet of Jesus. It says like God will bless the feet that go and spread the gospel. So if we're just sitting and we're only scrolling and we're only posting, I think we're still missing a lot of people around us, people that we could pray for, whether that's the person that's on the side of the road that needs prayer or whatever that case may be. I just feel like we're not called to just post on our phones. That is a huge benefit. And I have seen a massive, massive blessing from the gift of social media, the gift of this phone, but also it has to be in real life too, because I think that is really where our faith is tested. If we're so scared to just go up to a person and say, hey, God, reveal this to me for you. I want to pray for you. But we're really bold online. Like, I just feel like we're missing what Jesus did. Jesus went to people. Jesus prayed for people. Jesus went out of his way for people. And we're called to model him. And so we have to do it in both ways. And I just think it's easier to do it online because we're bolder. We can post it. We're like, okay, post and goes, post and then just get off my phone. But I think God called us to radical, bold faith. And so let's try a challenge of praying for someone this week, someone that we don't know. Let's try it.
Yeah, that's so good. It's a good point that it's a both and. I actually just recently met someone who grew up not being religious at all, had never even heard about Jesus, which first of all is mind-boggling to me in North America. I'm like, how have you not heard of Jesus?
Wow.
But she was actually just one day scrolling TikTok and she saw a verse in Proverbs come up and it really spoke deeply to what she was going through in the moment. And then after that, it was just curiosity. She started, Googling, like, where did this come from? Figured out it was scripture, then started Googling Christian churches in my area and ended up at my church. And now she's being discipled really well, is rooted in community and actually just got baptized a couple months back. And so that's just like a wonderful testimony of how the Lord can use any format. If he were in 2026 today, like, I'm actually curious what your thoughts are on this. Like, do you think he would be on social media, and would he do it differently than what Christian creators are doing now, or do you think he would be doing the same?
Again, this is just such an interesting conversation that my husband and I talk about all the time, because we constantly wrestle with the tension of posting your faith publicly online, and what does that look like to be a light in a dark space, to be in the world but not of the world. And it was funny because I actually had a friend post a poll on Instagram, and he's not a Christian, but he loves to have these conversations. And he said, do you think that Jesus would be on Instagram? And I think like 60 to 70% of people said no. And I was like, that's really interesting. I'm curious why people think that. I obviously believe and know that with social media, there's a lot of temptations, especially as a male. We know that TikTok and Instagram will cater content specifically for men based off of you sign up with a new profile and you say, I'm a male and I'm 18 years old. They're going to send you more profanity and provocative and nude images. And so I'm sure Jesus would maybe have an account and he would say, hey, this is my profile. But I could imagine he doesn't doom scroll, hardly gets on. He posts a post of encouragement and then he gets off. I could see Jesus doing that. He's like, hey, here's my word for the day. Be blessed. Here's my scripture. And then he dips. I can't imagine Jesus doom scrolling, because he would be tempted by a lot of things. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, he'd probably cut it off. So if Instagram caused him to stumble, he might cut it off.
That's so good. I love that. Yeah, what are your thoughts, Cherie?
No, I think I can definitely attest to that. I think there's nuance in the sense that God will always be able to turn what is meant for evil for good, and there's no space and territory in this world, digital and in real life, that is not redeemable for Jesus. But Jesus is also clear to tell us to walk the narrow path, to be in salt and in light. And I'm also just thinking about, like there's statistics that Gen Zs are there's a spiritual awakening that's happening. They're seeing that wait, like, this all the wealth and the materials that the world has promised me to be fulfilling no longer actually gives them joy, safety, comfort, and community. And so they're searching for spiritual truth. But more than that, we're also seeing that Gen Zs want to know that Christianity is good more than
Right.
it's true, which is a shift that in
Yeah,
than the previous generation, especially non-church goers, are looking to faith and seeing like is believing in Jesus make this world better, or
Right.
is this just, the right thing to believe? So I'm
so
curious,
good.
Jeanine, even as we're thinking about being the hands and feet of Jesus and being the good Samaritan, like what does that look like for you as someone who is influencer, who spends a lot of time discipling and evangelizing online, where you have such a public profile? What does being a good Samaritan look like to you, and as you model it with your children and your family?
So this is a topic that I definitely feel very convicted in, and I feel like this is something I haven't done perfectly, and it's still something I'm evolving and constantly asking the Lord, like, what does serving your kingdom look like? One way for me, for sure, that my husband and I are very passionate about is we definitely give to charities as much as possible. Like, whenever something goes on in the world, whether that's Venezuela or when Texas had those really bad floods and there was families affected, we try to donate as often as possible. The number one thing that I've really tried to do is just let the Lord lead generosity, let the Lord lead where I'm supposed to go. Because I think sometimes this is where I get a little like, I'm trying to figure out how to say this because I think God calls each of us to different things. Some people might have
Totally.
a big heart for, volunteering at an orphanage. Someone might have a very big heart for human trafficking. Someone might have a very big heart for, single mothers. I
Yeah.
feel like single mothers right now has been more where I feel like the Lord is calling me. I've actually reached out to try to volunteer at a shelter where single mothers need support and stuff. But if I don't have the time, I still believe that you can give in other ways. You can still give your resources. So I donate clothing. I donate clothing to women's shelters. I donate diapers to the single mother shelter. And I just try to find ways that financially I can give back because the Lord has just blessed me. And I just believe, like, God, this is your money. This is not money. This is sowing back into the kingdom.
Yeah.
And I don't do this perfectly by any means, because I mean, I don't think that anyone fully knows how to handle all the needs in the world because there's so many that oftentimes it can feel a little overwhelming where you're like, okay, how do I handle this need and this
Yeah.
orphanage and this thing over in here and this missionary and this? So, but I'm just very passionate on anytime I host an event or anytime I raise money or I sell anything that has been given to me, giving those profits back, giving that to charity. Even I hosted a Christmas event here where I was like a gospel event and I invited all my followers and donated, over half of the proceeds to a single mom's shelter just because I believe we're supposed to give back. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of where like I try to help out and do what I can, but I feel like something that I often pray, and I definitely can do more of this, but I often pray whenever I go out in public is I say, God, who here do you want me to pray for? Who here do you want me to see? And there was a really cool story actually. I just moved to Oklahoma and I was new in town and I was just trying to find my footing here. And I was at Target and I literally I was like eavesdropping, but not really. I overheard this conversation and I literally heard this couple yelling at each other. And the guy was trying to get more food. They had two children with them in the cart. The mom literally screamed at her husband and said, "We don't have money. We can't afford it. Put it back." And I literally
Wow.
felt like the Lord was like, "Stop right now." And I was like, "Okay." And my heart started pounding. And I literally felt like the Lord was like, "Go talk to this couple." And so I went back and I was just like, "Hey, is there anything I can do for you guys? Like, I heard you guys are struggling." I was like, "I'm sorry if I was listening in, but is there any way that I can bless you?" And she just was like, "We can't afford our groceries right now. We don't have money. We have two children. We're running thin." And the Lord just prompted me to pay for their groceries. So I literally like sent them a ton of money and I was like, hey, whatever you need to like cover your groceries. And she started like bawling and gave me a huge hug and was like, I was literally asking God for a sign yesterday. And I felt like this was it. And I was just like,
Wow.
God, thank you so much. But it calls us to be obedient when it's awkward and
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And I didn't want to do it. And I'm like, oh, should I go up to them? And so
Right.
I think we just have to open our eyes and our ears a little bit more and just say, God, who here needs me today? Who here needs you today? For
Yeah.
you to shine through me for somebody. And so that's what it looks like for me personally. And it may be different than other people, but that's kind of what I try to do while I can here on
Yeah.
earth.
Oh, yeah, that's so beautiful. And it's just, how do you steward what you have in the moment? We can think like, oh, when I get 1 million followers, when I have $1 million, like you have all these future
Right.
plans, but actually the Lord gives when you are a faithful steward, when you are, I think it's like I'm going to butcher it. Heaven's currency is obedience. I think I heard that somewhere,
Yes.
but but
Yes.
it's true. Like as we are obedient, the Lord sees that and He blesses it, and He gives
Mhm.
so that we can serve His people. And so I think that's so beautiful. And so yeah, just going back to social media a bit, there's just such an oversaturation of voices just telling us what to focus on, where to put our money. There's World Vision, there's other places.
Right.
How do you know what to pay attention to and how to use your personal gifts for the kingdom? Like, let's say there's a 20-year-old girl listening to this podcast and she's like, I don't even know where to begin. What is my calling? What's my purpose? What would you say to her?
Yeah. I feel like I heard a quote once that said, like, your purpose is often correlated to your pain. And so, usually,
Oh,
God uses your pain points. So, whether that is like you came from an abusive home, or you came from maybe a toxic relationship, you came from something in your story that God will often use, like again, what the enemy meant for evil, God will use for good. And then also, God will sometimes just very clearly speak to you and show you what bothers you when you're looking at the news, when you're looking at things in the world. What just disrupts your peace? What bothers you so much that you're just like,
mhm.
I have to do something about it? And for me, it's funny because since becoming a mom, I mean, I had the support of my husband. I had the support of my family. I have a part time, babysitter that comes occasionally that helps me watch my child. I think about all the time. I'm like, how do single mothers do this? It literally like breaks my heart
Right.
for these moms. I don't know why I'm getting emotional because like motherhood is the most amazing and powerful thing that's ever happened to me. And I could not imagine doing it alone. And so when I think about these moms who are like postpartum and hormonal and struggling and trying to make ends meet and they're working double jobs and they're still breastfeeding. I'm like, how do you do that? And so you can see like that burdens me for single mothers. And so you have to look at like what in your story, what has God spoken to you? What bothers you so much that you're like, I have to make a change. And it
Right.
doesn't have to be everything. Focus on one thing that you feel like God has called you to. And I think that is the best thing that you can do.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think even just with talking to you, I see two examples, how God can move through us to use our skills for His glory. The first one, I found out that you actually sponsored 2 World Vision children, which is so cool. And that
Yes.
you explained to me was just kind of compelling in the moment. And then the second thing is that you actually got a vision for hats for women, and just an hour later, you got a message to collab on hats for women, which I think is
Yes.
so cool. And it just shows that Jesus can really speak to us in different ways and prompts our hearts, whether that's like just in a moment or something that we've had like dreams about or visions, or, we've just like thought about it even just like since we were a kid. So I think it's just really cool that there's something in each of us that can impact the kingdom.
Amen. I agree. And it's been really cool even just like sponsoring these girls, and just getting to watch them grow up. And I love receiving the letters and like seeing what they're up to and their drawings. And it's so sweet. And I love what you mentioned earlier, like how God can use that little. If we're faithful with little, God can give us much. And it's not just so we can become greedy and hoard more, but it's so we can give more. And I think
Yeah.
even with just like what World Vision is doing, a lot of us are like, I don't have $39. I'm like, no, trust me, you do. You buy Starbucks, you eat out a lot. Like, I think we
Right.
can all find $39 a
Clocked.
month. And yeah, and help out a child that, needs food and water and clothing and basic needs that we all deserve.
No, Jeanine, this is beautiful. I actually did a few interviews with young adult donors recently who sponsored children, and a lot of them also mentioned that their motivation is not only to help, helping someone in need is an incredible act that Jesus calls us to, but giving is also a spiritual discipline. And Gen Zs
Right.
are saying that I want to give my money because I am called to steward the blessings that God has given me, but I also don't want money to rule my life. I don't want fear,
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
insecurity, and a sense of lack to rule the way that I steward my finances. And so we're seeing Gen Z also leaning into giving and generosity as a way of growing closer to Jesus. And it's so beautiful because I actually also sponsor a child as well. And I sponsored her at the age of 14. She grew up in kind of a semi-rural area in Bolivia. And she grew up with a lot of poverty around her. And a lot of kids also didn't have safe spaces to grow up. And so there was a lot of violence and there's gang activity, and kids are tempted to join those activities instead of going to school. And so when World Vision partnered with that community, my sponsored child was actually a part of one of the leaders and the volunteers to help kids go to school and helping them to stay
Mm,
safe and to
Wow.
practice discipline. And now she is
yeah.
actually in the military, or she's training to be in the military because she has this passion to see safety in her community and her
Wow.
Wow.
nation. And she is also a fellow believer, and that is the blessing and calling that God has given her. And so it's really beautiful to see that when we give, it blesses our hearts because, the Bible says that it's more blessed for us to give than to receive. But truly, when we give, the Lord does steward our impact and our obedience, and it truly makes a difference in someone else's life. And so, thank you so much, Jeanine, for your support, and for anyone who is
Yeah.
listening to this podcast and wondering, like, does this really help? Like, what can I trust? What can I not? I think just that sense of trusting the Lord, it's calling, and knowing that He will steward your obedience, even though you might not see it, is it's so good to be at peace, knowing that that is all God asks of us.
Yeah.
Amen. So good.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as we start to wrap up here, I have one more question for you all. Why is Gen Z uniquely positioned to create change in our world today?
Oh, Gen Z is powerful. Like you kind of said at the beginning, they're wanting truth and they're hungry for it. And I feel like they stop at nothing to seek the truth. And they're world changers. They have now these cell phones and they start movements and all these new change.org things. And they're just so powerful and influential. And honestly, I think sometimes they're now realizing I don't need to have a large platform. I don't need to be an influencer. I can just post my video or even make a difference within my friends and my community.
Yeah.
And they're go-getters, which I think is really, really cool. And I think a lot of people give Gen Z this bad rap. And I'm just like, that's not fair. Like give them more credit. Because yes, they are growing up with technology, but they're also using a lot of that technology to, their advantage and for God's glory. And I've just seen revival happening on TikTok and so many people coming to know Jesus because people are deciding to be bold and say things and not
Yeah.
care if they get bullied, not care if it loses them friends. And I think that's really cool. And so I believe in Gen Z. I believe that the search for truth is the best thing you can do because ultimately if you're really looking for truth, it's going to lead you to Jesus. And then when they
Yeah.
find Jesus, then they share it. And so I'm like, you go, Gen Z.
No, that's amazing. And alongside truth, I think Gen Z is committed to authenticity.
Yeah.
Even Gen Alpha today, they will look at an image and tell you right away if it's AI generated or if it's real. And so that lens and that hunger for what is true, what is inauthentic versus authentic is, I think, what's marking our faith. We don't want a faith that is performative,
Right.
perfect, but inauthentic. We want a faith that is messy, that is in progress, but is real and truly committed, and that is sustained by the grace of Jesus instead of our own works. And I think the more that Gen Z is able to step into that vulnerability, the more that God and Jesus can utilize us, and the more of his grace can show up in our lives in a powerful way. So I'm really excited as I continue to watch Gen Z flip the script or even challenge the ways that things have done before, and move us closer to a real faith that could be displayed without shame and without guilt, but that still stands truth to the test of time.
Yeah. Thank you both for joining me today. It was wonderful hearing your insights, and I learned a lot. This was a great conversation, so thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun. I appreciate it.